Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing you think that you need. Every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.
You're listening to the Minimalist Podcast with Joshua Fields Milburn and TK Coleman.
Thank you, Malabama. Nicodemus is in Montana, but he'll be in studio with us next week because we're on the Everything Tour right now. We still have 3 more tour stops. We'll be in Fresno and San Diego and San Francisco. There's still a few free tickets left to those events, theminimalists.com/tour. But here in the flesh right now is TK Coleman, fresh off a flight from Chattanooga. How was that?
Oh, such a good time. Shout out to Ted Alling and Chattanooga Prep for having me come out for their Grit speaker series. So awesome to see those students. I've been a part of Chattanooga Prep for some time now, watching them when the school first opened. So watching the students grow up, watching them flourish, really awesome to see them and all the hard work they're doing.
You know, you can hire the Minimalist to speak at your school or organization or event or conference or nonprofit organization, university, college, whatever it might be. Theminimalists.com/speaking for details. You know, Chattanooga is the only city, or at least it was the first city, I assume it's still the only city, that has its own typeface.
So really?
Yeah, when you go to Chattanooga, everything is in the Chattanooga typeface, and it's a beautiful typeface. Put a link. There's a great article about this. We'll find it. We'll put a link to it in the show notes here, because what's fascinating is they take aesthetics seriously. Chattanooga is one of my favorite cities. It's certainly my favorite city we've never done a tour stop in. It's a smaller city. I think it's the 5th largest city in Tennessee. There's another factoid for you as well. It's Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis, Clarksville, and then Chattanooga.
We got to get out there, man.
Yes.
Please give me an excuse to go back to Tennessee.
We'll do a Tennessee tour if we get enough patrons who say yes, coming out to Tennessee, or let us know in the comments on YouTube as well if you're listening to the public version of the episode. Speaking of this public version, coming up on this free public minimal episode, a caller has a question about letting go of memories, the bad ones that clutter our minds, as well as the good ones that we enjoy remembering. And then we've got a lightning round question from a listener who wants to create a beautiful, uncluttered home, but they are struggling with procrastination. That's followed by our Right Here, Right Now segment and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full Maximal edition of episode 440, where we answer 5 times the questions and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalists. Your support keeps our podcast 100% advertisement free, because sing along at home, y'all. Advertisements suck. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or a comment for our show, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice recording right from your phone to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Jerry.
Hi there, I'm Jerry, and I'm a Patreon subscriber. At the age of 30, while being a social worker in Butler County, Ohio, I suffered a massive stroke in which I lost the ability to speak, move, read, and write. Obviously, I'm speaking with you today, so I have improved quite a bit. But one everlasting effect of my stroke is that I was forced to be a minimalist of all of my memories. It's like within a matter of seconds, a hoarding specialist came into my mind and took my most precious things away against my will. I'm calling today because now I'm really struggling with letting go of physical things. Although I don't think I had this problem before because I had my memories, it is now a major issue in my life because the only way that I remember a lot of my memories is if I have a physical item to look at that helps me to remember what I once truly got fulfillment from. For example, my in-laws took me to see my all-time favorite musical in London, England. However, I did not remember that trip at all until I found a ticket stub while cleaning out things. It's almost like Jerry 1.0 had a really hard reset, and Jerry 2.0 now keeps everything to claim some sense of past normalcy and control. I always hear about minimalists getting rid of things because really the joy doesn't come from the thing, but rather the experience. But how do I let go of things when they are truly all they have left to show for the first 30 years of my life, now that all of my memories are erased? Thank you so much for any insight.
Shout out to Butler County, Ohio. I used to live there. My family's from Middletown, Ohio. And so a lot of my family grew up there. I spent a lot of time there. Jerry, first, let me say a few things to you. First off, I'm really sorry that you're struggling with this. I know how difficult it can be to let go. It's even more difficult when you feel like you're forced to let go because something was stripped from you. But I do want to say congratulations. Sounds like you've improved significantly and you've made significant progress from Jerry 1.0 to Jerry 2.0. And you're in this space of uncertainty. I might say a liminal space of variety and new opportunity. So I'd like to reframe this with you a little bit. And maybe we can help you uncover Jerry 3.0. There's this thing about memories. You heard in our last Netflix film, our memories are not in our things, our memories are inside us. However, I also acknowledge that sometimes our things can trigger those memories that are inside us. But also, I think memories can be a bit of a problem when our identity gets tied up in our memories. Keep in mind that many of your memories aren't just the good memories of the good old days and how wonderful everything was. Many memories are traumatic, and often letting go of those memories or forgetting those memories is a great way for us to move forward. To not continue to cling to the memories allows us the space to live in the present moment. So memories become clutter when they get in the way of this present moment. That's obviously true for bad or traumatic memories from the past. We call those nightmares, right? But I think it's also true sometimes of the good memories. When we cling to the good, we get dragged back into the past and it removes us from the present moment. And so holding on to memories is fine. You're going to have memories. There's no question about that. But TK, maybe you can help me understand. If I ask you this question here, what's wrong with losing your memories?
I don't want to think about it in terms of what's wrong with it, but what's difficult about it? What's tough about it? Because if you lose your memories, that means there's a whole set of conveniences, a whole set of luxuries, a whole set of awesome experiences that are now taken away from you. You are not wrong for being in that condition. However, that is a challenge with which we can empathize. And I would say with respect to things, you are illustrating, Jerry, one of the positive roles that things play in our culture. Because I don't believe in an anti-thing philosophy. Things are awesome. Things are beautiful. But anything, no matter how beautiful it is, can become ugly when you use it for some sort of unhealthy or unintended purpose. And so you're giving an example of all the beauty that can come from things when you can look at a ticket stub and that can take you on an emotional journey to something that was really meaningful for you. You don't have to throw that ticket stub away for anyone. You have the right to hold on to that. And just because it's clutter for someone else who does have the ability to say, hey, that concert that I went to, that amusement park that I went to, that beautiful play that I went to, that circus, that festival that I went to, it lives inside of me, not in this ticket. Well, for you, it still lives inside of you, but the ticket is necessary for the recall. And though it's clutter to someone else, it doesn't have to be clutter for you. I think the real question here is not about the past, because you have the right to hold on to all the things you currently own if they serve that purpose for you. I think the real question is about the future. Given that this is my new reality, how do I use things to my advantage going forward to capture memories in a way that doesn't become clutter? Because if you don't have a standard, then going forward, you're going to have a need that you didn't have in the past. And that is to hang on to everything for the purpose of this recall experience that you need. And so pragmatically, I would consider things like journaling, audio journaling, something along those lines of capturing and documenting experiences that don't require you to collect everything. What are some digital ways you can do it? Or how can you make use of writing? And when people journal and they go back and they read what they wrote, it's really cool because it's more powerful than a picture, because you can remember the things that you're writing about in a way that a picture can do for you, but you also get to see what mood you were in, what state of mind you were in, and there's something that's deeper there. So I would encourage looking into some new practices that allow you to collect these memories or these memory triggers in more efficient ways.
In the Minimalist second book, Everything That Remains, is a chapter about dealing with my mother's sentimental items. And eventually I made the decision to get rid of the vast majority of them, almost all of them. But I did take photos of many of the things, especially the really big things that it wouldn't have made sense to hold on to and simply shove in a storage locker and then pay money. Why? To go access those things so they could trigger the memories inside me. And so I took photos of them, and I still have access to those photos if I ever want to go back and look at them. However, I very rarely, it's been many years since I've gone and looked at any of those photos. In fact, the last time I looked at them was when we were making our last Netflix film. I was going through my archives for films or for photos for the film itself. And had we not been going through that exercise, I don't know that I would have went through those at all. There's the peace of mind, though, of knowing that, oh, yes, I can go back and look at those if I want. And I think that's why we often hold on to the physical things. It's just in case I might want access to it, right? And that's less of a problem with the digital side of it, because I've taken a picture and it doesn't take up all that space in my life, as long as it's not taking up space in my mind. And so when I'm talking about memory clutter, TK, I've realized that letting go has become a superpower of mine with respect to stuff, but also letting go in all of these other areas. Letting go of my former career, letting go of these bits of my identity, the ego, the false self, one might call it, but also letting go of relationships, or letting go of the way that things were. Letting go of the way I wish things were as well. These are all different types of letting go. And along the path, I've realized something that I didn't intend. I let go of many of my memories, not in a way that I did it even intentionally. But what happened is, as I stopped clinging to the past and to the way things were and to the material possessions, as I stopped clinging to certain toxic relationships or careers or projects, as I stopped clinging, I also stopped clinging to the memories from the past. And one might say, oh, but you say your memory isn't as good now? No, it's not as robust, that's for sure, because I haven't held on to many of the memories. And in a weird way, that's been really freeing for me. Because when I'm truly living in the moment, when I experience this lightness of peace and joy in the moment, for me, it's never grounded in the past. It's always grounded in the right here, right now. And whenever the past comes creeping in, especially those traumatic memories, it ruins that peace that I'm experiencing. But I can also make an argument that quite often that nostalgia can ruin the peace of the moment as well. What do you have to say about that?
Nostalgia ruining the peace of the moment?
Yeah.
Have you experienced that happening before?
Absolutely, I have. Yes. And so what happens is I get thought clutter then. Memory clutter becomes thought clutter. And this experience I'm having, walking down the street with my daughter, through the nature preserve with my wife, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about this good experience from the past, a great meal that I ate, or a wonderful trip that I had, or this great podcast that we recorded. All things from the past. Now all of a sudden I'm not there witnessing and experiencing what's going on right there in front of me.
Yeah, it's like the TV shows where someone's talking to you about something that's really heartfelt and they're just pouring their heart out to you, and you're daydreaming about something. You're completely lost in a fantasy. Your body's there, but your mind is gone. And they say, yeah, so what do you think of that? And you go, huh? What? Oh, you weren't even there. Physically you were, but not mentally. And there's also what we could call reverse nostalgia, which is so much of today's preoccupation with documenting everything, right? We're taking a walk, we're having a great conversation, but I gotta get everything in the form of a picture because, hey man, pics where it didn't happen, or I wanna be able to look back on it and enjoy it. And just like nostalgia, there's nothing wrong with looking back on the past and saying, oh, this place reminds me of the good old days. That's good. When I go to this football field, at my high school that I haven't been to in 20 years, it makes me think of that time I ran for that touchdown and I had that moment. Oh, it just feels so awesome. That's cool. Nothing's wrong with that. And there's nothing wrong with saying, let me take a picture of this moment because in 10 years, I want to be able to relive it. But it's when you find yourself saying, hey, I just took a vacation. I just took a nice walk. I just spent an hour with someone that I loved. And I don't even remember what the conversation was about.
I wasn't there. I wasn't present. And isn't it the funny thing, when you're at school and they're taking attendance, what do we say? Here, present. But are we really? In a way, I am here. And acknowledging that I am here doesn't require the memories of the past. Now, I'm not saying memories are bad. I'm not saying they're good either. I'm saying that clinging to them will drag us out of that present moment. Jerry, I'd love to send you a copy of T.K. Coleman's first book. It's called Emotional Clutter, because you're dealing with quite a bit of emotional clutter amidst this memory clutter that's going on as well. And so to find Jerry 3.0, you can download the Emotional Clutter book. It's free over on our website. If you go to theminimalists.com/emotional clutter, we'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. Or Jerry, if you'd prefer to listen to the audiobook version of Emotional Clutter, TK and I recorded it together, and then we had these conversations between each chapter. And I really enjoyed that because we broke down these different aspects of the clutter that clutters up our emotions. Theminimalists.com/emotional clutter. You can download that for free. Alabama, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round, where we answer your questions from Patreon.
Yes, indeed. We'll get back to our callers here in a bit. Now, during the lightning round, we each have 60 seconds to answer your question with a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. So you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media, or you can text your grandma or your son or your daughter or whoever you want with these minimal maxims. You can find all of our minimal maxims in the show notes as well at theminimalists.com/podcast. And we'll email those show notes to you each week. We'll never send you spam or junk or advertisements. But if you're on our email newsletter list over at theminimalists.email, we'll send you not just the show notes, but in there we have 5, 6, 7, 10 minimal maxims, pithy little phrases, aphorisms from the Minimalists that we'll share with you each week. And they're also all collected on one website, minimalmaxims.com. It just presents you one maxim at a time, so you can refresh your screen. It gets something pithy every single time you open your web browser. Alabama, Lee has a question for us.
I aspire to have a beautiful, uncluttered home like the spaces I see in your Patreon home tours. I tell myself I will someday, but how do I make someday today?
TK, I really enjoy the Patreon home tours because these are real people's houses. It's not like Architectural Digest going into a home and sprucing it up just right, adding the right accessories just for the photo shoot. These are real people in real homes. And some of them I see and I'm like, oh, maybe that's not technically minimalist. And I'm like, well, who cares? It's a simple space that works for that person. And the other people say, wow, that's even way more minimalist than my home. Wow, okay, maybe now I need to reconsider what's going on in my own home as well. So Lee's question about aspiring to have a beautiful, uncluttered home like those home tours that we see over on Patreon each week. But he keeps telling himself, or he or she keeps telling themselves that, you know what, I'm going to make that happen someday, but then someday never arrives. You have something pithy for Lee?
Yeah, I would say if you want to start tomorrow, try to do it all. But if you want to start today, give yourself permission to start small. Some of my most valuable friends are people who knew how to talk me into being more casual. We need friends that can motivate us and encourage us to be more intense, but we also need friends who can encourage us to be more lighthearted and not make a big deal out of things. Sometimes you need to approach life with the attitude of saying, hey, what if this is the one thing that changes everything? What if this is your last day on earth or your last opportunity to ever get after it? What if this is your defining moment? But you also need those moments where you say, hey, what if this is no big deal? What if I get as many tries as I want? What if I try and I fail and no one even cares? And I think this is one of those areas where you can afford to be and benefit from being a little more casual about it. This doesn't have to be something that succeeds. This doesn't have to be something that you can achieve in a day. This doesn't have to be something that's perfect and permanent such that when you do it, you can never alter it. You can say, hey, What's one small, really easy step forward I can take? What's one little thing that's nagging me that I want to change? This week, it'll be my goal just to change that. No step is too small to take if you're actually going to take it and it's a step that you want to take.
Yesterday, when you and I were talking about this, you said that moderation is the enemy of procrastination.
That's right.
And I like that because that was my approach into minimalism. It took me 8 months to radically simplify my life. I started small. I did a 30-day experiment where I got rid of one item a day each day for 30 days. Eventually, that turned into the 30-day minimalism game because I realized even for me, that wasn't radical enough. If the average household has hundreds of thousands of items in it, 30 items isn't really going to put much of a dent in it. But what it does do is it shows you that it's possible to let go. Letting go of something, of anything, is a great place to start. Hence the 30-day minimalism game where it's like, okay, I'm going to get rid of one thing today, 2 things tomorrow, 3 things the next day. And you start to ramp up. By day 15, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get rid of 15 items today. And tomorrow I have to get rid of 16 items. And you start questioning all of the things that you previously thought were necessary or essential. And you realize that not only are they non-essential, but they don't add any real measurable value to my life. In fact, they might be getting in the way. And if they're getting in the way, what are they? They are simply clutter. And so if I were to append what you just said about the moderation is the enemy of procrastination, I would always tell myself, don't let your procrastination turn pro. I'm an amateur procrastinator, right? But when you don't take any action ever, you become a professional procrastinator. You've let your procrastination turn pro. And so I like what you had to say there. To start today, you'll start small. Now, of course, you can do something radical like Nicodemus did with his packing party. You don't have to start small, but if you feel like you're stuck, starting small is better than not starting at all. I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did, Malabama. So let me give you something pithy here. Someday does not exist. It is merely a trick the mind plays to avoid the present moment. This is coming up again. Our last question, we were talking about how the past can pull you out of the present moment, but you know what else can pull you out of the present moment? The future, focusing on the future. I'll get to that someday, but of course, someday is not a day of the week. It's a lie. The past does not exist. The future does not exist except in your mind, which exists right now in the present moment. And if it's existing in the present moment, getting in the way of your peace of the present moment, then of course it is clutter. So Lee, you can certainly start with something like the 30-day minimalism game, theminimalists.com/game. You can download the free calendar there. You partner up with a friend, a family member. Maybe you find someone who's a bit more structured or rigid in their life. You find your JFM, and like Nicodemus did with me. You know, Nicodemus is super wiggly. I'm rather rigid or structured is a way that I would put it. And when you partner up two people like that, you get this really interesting combination of wiggliness and of structure. If all of your friends are like Kobe Bryant, it's going to drive you crazy because they're always going to try to get you to improve and be your best self and more. Where's the time for relaxing? But if all of your friends are like the dude, then all of a sudden
the dude abides.
All of a sudden you don't get anything done. But you have a little bit of Kobe and a little bit of the dude in your life. You have a little bit of Nicodemus and a little bit of JFM in your life. You know what happens? You're able to be structured enough that things happen, but you're able to be fluid enough or wiggly enough that you're able to enjoy the process along the way. Any last words on that, TK?
Yeah, I think the question is not how can I motivate myself to do things that I can't do? It's how can I give myself permission to choose things that are actually doable? When someone tells me I can't do that, my response is, I believe you, because whatever way you've set it up in your mind, it's been constructed in a manner that simply can't be done. So how can we find a way to reconstruct it, downsize it, simplify it, and transform it into something that you can currently do? Because you achieve the ability to do what you can't do by starting with things that you can do and letting the momentum build up over time.
Lee, when I'm struggling or when I'm stuck, there are 3 things that I say to myself, and I say it in 3s. Maybe it's the OCD in me, or maybe it's just an incantation, but it's 3 words I say 3 times. Let it go, let it go, let it go.
I feel an R&B chorus coming on.
I hear Idina Menzel perking up somewhere.
Let it go, let it go, let it go. We're just getting started, y'all. We've got a profusion of callers to talk to on the private podcast. But first, real quick for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the Minimalists. We have 3 new series from the Minimalists. We just announced this over on Patreon. The first one is called Thursday Conversations with TK. This is season 1 of that. Starting in April, TK Coleman will host weekly video conversations with some of the most interesting people that he'd like you to meet. It's like eavesdropping on a FaceTime call between 2 fascinating people. Can't wait for y'all to hear that. There'll be one this Thursday over on Patreon. Also, this series we've been working on since last year with Malabama and Professor Sean, and directed by Danny Unknown. It's called Fragments. Season 1 of Fragments. It's 6 episodes. Coming this spring. It's an artistic video series. It's directed by Danny Unknown and starring me and TK and Ryan Nicodemus, and it's going to explore several different manifestations of internal clutter, from the unforeseen problems caused by chronic discontent to the trappings of success and identity. It's this beautiful artistic video series. You can check that out on Patreon coming this spring for our Audio Plus subscribers. And one more thing, I was driving to dinner, or maybe it was lunch, with Malabama one day. We were just going to have a conversation about a few things work-related, and she goes, "Hey, can I play something for you?" I said, "Sure." And she gets her phone out, and she plays the most beautiful meditation I'd ever heard. Now, we know that Bama has the most angelic voice on this side of the Mississippi, this side of heaven.
Y'all are too nice.
And so coming later this year, gracing your headphones later this year, Minimalist Meditations with Malabama, Season 1, the most beautiful voice in the podcast universe, our very own Malabama, will help declutter your mind with her monthly Minimalist Meditations. These audio episodes will be designed to be replayed as frequently as you'd like, so you can start a daily practice of living with less stuff in your head. So 3 different series from the Minimalists. Obviously, our main focus is still the Minimalist podcast, but we wanted to give those to you so you can support us on Patreon. Oh, by the way, I had one other thing that was going on in the life of the Minimalist. Speaking of Patreon, we just enabled something over there called community chats. You know, we left social media recently and we're taking a break from social media for a year, but we started this thing over there on Patreon, and I think this is what social media was supposed to be. It's a respectful, loving discussion amongst a supportive community. And so over on our Patreon, it's community chats. You go into the app and you can interact with our other thousands of other patrons. Having a problem with letting go of something? Great. No problem. Other people can help. The Minimalists can interact with you over there as well. And so we're starting different chats, different discussions over there. And it's super informal. It's like having a group text with several thousand other aspiring minimalists. It's patreon.com/The Minimalist. You can check that out. It's called the new Patreon Community Chats. We got a bunch more to talk about, but Malabama, what else you got for us?
Here's a Minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, this is Hope from Colorado, and I was just calling in, and I just wanted to make a suggestion of, I made a capsule wardrobe with quick-dry clothing. It combined my need for activewear and everyday clothing. All the colors look nice together while also serving a purpose. I chose the classic hiking layering system and chose colors I love. I also used Poshmark to buy the items at fantastic prices. You don't have to wear black every day to have a functional wardrobe with items that last.
Hope, thank you so much for that helpful comment. For anyone else who has a listener tip or insight about this episode or any other episode, leave a comment on Patreon or YouTube, or better yet, send a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com so we can feature your voice on the show. All right, that's the first 25% of episode 440. We'll see you on Patreon for the full Maximal Edition, which includes answers to a bunch more questions like, what's the best way to let go of possessions if I don't want to throw them away? How do I replace some of the things I've let go of with more minimalist options? What's the best way to stop reorganizing my clutter and simply get rid of it? plus a million more questions and simple living segments over on the Minimalist Private Podcast, including my all-time favorite sucky advertisement. We also have an outstanding home tour from one of our listeners this week. Visit patreon.com/theminimalist or click the link down in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly Maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives, all the way back to episode 001. By the way, Patreon is now offering free trials, so if you'd like to test drive our private podcast, you can join for 7 days for free. And that is our minimal episode for today. If you leave here with just one message, let it be this: love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Peace.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.